So this is a guided tutorial for Andromeda clients that shows you how to respond to alerts of employee data and or credentials that have been located by your dark web monitoring tool. So first, whenever a compromise is identified, you're going to receive an email. We also provide monthly reporting of activity to ensure that you are aware of any and all alerts. So if you've got any questions related to how alerts are communicated to you, feel free to reach your service advocate. But for the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to assume that you've received an email alert and that you now need to take some action to resolve the situation. So the first actions you're actually going to take will be related to the dark web compromises, and that actually is going to happen outside of this dashboard. So first, when an alert comes through to your email, you're going to want to get connected with that specific teammate to identify what other internal passwords for the business need to be updated. These are going to be passwords that are going to rely on the same mix of characters and numbers, anything that feels like it needs to be updated that would be associated with this compromise. So once we've taken care of our internal passwords, next, it is important that you speak with the employee and just make sure that you recommend to them that they update any passwords that share that same character and number combination for their own personal lives. Of course, you cannot mandate this, but it is best practices. So you're always going to want to make sure to recommend that to the staff that have been impacted. So now that you've spoken, we're going to cover the steps that you're going to take to resolve the alert in this portal. The screen you see here is what the client dashboard is going to look like in the dark web monitoring tool. We've set up a test account, as you can see here, so this is not anyone's specific data. This is for our test. But once you've logged in, you're going to be able to see data related to a specific date range. So if the date that you were looking for isn't in this range, you'll need to update that. But you'll also be able to see the domain or domains that are being monitored by the tool, and then the number of compromises associated with that time frame. You're going to want to come over here and click the Compromises tab, because this is where the list of the compromises are going to exist. So before we dig into what you're going to do, I'm going to walk you through the information that you're able to see here. So again, on the left-hand side, this is pretty self-explanatory. We have some check boxes here, so we can check single or multiple accounts. The next column is going to be the date that the information was added to the system, the dark web monitoring tool. The third column is going to be the date that that information was found on the dark web. This column here is the monitored value. This simply means this was the monitored element that was located. So if you're monitoring for your email domain, you're going to notice these are going to be the emails for staff at your company. The monitored type is what we were monitoring. So again, your domain, that's typically what we're going to see here. Password criteria, I don't typically see data over here, but again, it's pretty self-explanatory. If there's something in here, it's going to be related to the password criteria. Password hit, this one is important. So this is going to be the column that has the data associated with the specific password that was located. You're going to find a couple different types of information here. You may find that the information was not disclosed. That means that our tool and our sources were not able to identify either an encrypted or a non-encrypted password. They just know that there was activity related to sharing of information related to this domain. You may also see legit and typed out passwords here. So these are going to be the ones where you're going to want to ask the employee to change anything that looks or, smells or feels like this, right? And then another example that you might see is what's called a hashed password. Right? And what hashed means is essentially a jumbled up mess of letters and symbols and numbers. And what this is it's actually an encrypted password that was located. So it's not usable information as it stands for us, but cyber criminals are very savvy and they have the codes available. They have the tools available to easily decrypt this. So they can turn this from something that looks like this to something that actually is your password by cracking that code. So if you do come across a hashed password, you need to treat that with the same, attention to detail and give it the same level of importance as you would anything that is fully disclosed. And again, even if the password wasn't disclosed, we still want to make sure that we're taking appropriate action. But those are the three different ways you're going to see passwords show up typically. The next column is going to be PII hit, and PII stands for personally identifiable information. So that's going to be stuff, I like to say, things that you'd find on your driver's license, right? It's going to be first names, last names. It could be your physical address. It could be your date of birth. phone numbers. Criminals can use this information to social engineer. They can use this information to steal identities. This stuff's very important to make sure that if you ever see something in here that you are letting the staff know that there was a compromise and it also included certain personal information. Unfortunately, there's not much that somebody can do once the information is on the dark web. But at least, if somebody found out that their first name, last name, address, zip code, date of birth was compromised, they should know that, and they may want to take some actions personally to help themselves defend against that. The next column is going to be the compromise type. So this is the activity that led to the compromise. So one of the most popular things you're going to see here is going to be data breach. What that points to is a third-party data breach that occurred at another company, right? And what you can sometimes see is if you come over here to this origin column, if you see a data breach and you actually see an origin, that means that there was a data breach at teespring.com that led to this information over here being compromised. So sometimes you won't have a disclosure of that information, and that just means that the tool doesn't have enough information yet, or potentially that this is not a publicly disclosed breach. So we just aren't able to get to the root of what the compromise type was. Other times you might see things in here like phishing, if the compromise was a result of one of your staff accidentally handing out their password or things related to that type of activity. But that's what this is about. This is just the type of issue that occurred that then led to the compromise. Here we do have a source. That's the area on the dark web that the information was located. So right here we do see ID theft forum. That means that the tool was able to locate a forum where thieves and criminals hang out and they share and sell data. So that's what that means there. And again, we kind of covered, but origin essentially just means that this was the company that was breached or hacked or gotten into. Sometimes you're going to see that that's not disclosed. Other times it is disclosed. As I mentioned earlier, this may be a result of either, there hasn't been a public disclosure yet or something of that nature. The final column we're going to cover here is the status column. Pretty self-explanatory. There are some nice color codes here that can help you tell what the status of a record is. And if you hover over this question mark right here, you're able to see the legend for how to read that, okay? So more often than not, when you come into this account, you're going to see records that are going to be labeled fuchsia, and that's going to mean that that one hasn't been handled yet on your end, and we want to make sure that we resolve it. So the last spot I'll cover is that this drop-down menu here. So this is going to be where we're going to execute actions, and that takes us right into the action that we're going to want to execute. So as a quick recap, you will have received an email that's going to let you know that you had a compromised record. You've already spoken with internally the staff or the teammate that was impacted, and we've already taken action to update passwords internally that might be vulnerable, and we've suggested that the staff also take their own action to update their own personal accounts. Now we just need to come in here and resolve the record. So what you would do is you would just select single or multiple records that you need to resolve. Select the operation from this dropdown, and you're going to mark it as resolved. Click execute. And then you'll notice that over here, those 3 records that I selected are now status green, which means resolved. The only other thing I would like to point out for you, because it is very helpful sometimes, will be that you can come up here to this support section, and you can actually grab a glossary of terms, so that if you ever saw a piece of information that you didn't quite understand, you can go and see if it's here quickly and read the legit definition. But of course, if there's ever anything here that doesn't make 100% sense or you have a question, you are more than welcome to always reach your Andromeda team. That's what we're here for. This completes your tutorial, your walkthrough of the dark web portal. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your continued business.